Look, I'm so blessed intuitively with marketing. I've always understood what people were gonna do. I think I'm a great marketer. If your product is shit, the greatest marketing in the world is just gonna expose that. So the way you build an actual brand is by delivering on the steak, not focusing on the sizzle. By doing what you do well. And I think way too many times people think there's some path or some clever trick to branding. Branding is the marathon that you talked about, long game versus short game. And I think that at the end of the day, there's no hack, there's no platform that closes the gap on actually the execution of the craft. You can be super clever, you can review every restaurant. If you don't know how to do your job, you will lose. I'd like to ask you a question. You compared writing a handwritten note to somebody versus posting a comment to the masses about your gratitude towards that same client. I think those are two totally different contexts.
I agree. I'm saying their reaction.
Because they don't.
If I do both, the one that'll get them to pick up the phone is the note.
But I would argue, as somebody who sends direct messages to people, I think, the lady clapped and I was watching and I was kind of watching how she was interacting with her friend. I'm fascinated. I don't think there's a right or wrong. I'm actually asking the question for the whole group. I'm fascinated that we put a romance on the tools that deliver gratitude versus the action of gratitude, right? If you go back, there's a whole lot of conversation of like, don't do it in social, write a handwritten note. You can go back and see people talk about the telephone as a negative to handwritten. Like this goes on and on and on and on. I'm fascinated, been spending a lot of time looking at big data around actually having gratitude versus the tool. Like where does this end? Because is it going face to face and shaking hand? Do we communicate through? I know that I'm sending gratitude at 11 o'clock at night on a flight in a direct message. If I posted, thanks for all the fans, love you super much, versus sending a message saying, hey Rick, really appreciate on that last comment when I made that point, you looked at your guy and said, yeah, he's right. It's actually doing the action, not the marketing. I'm fascinated by the debate of mediums versus the intent of the energy.
Yeah, and I will add a caveat to my comment. I think, and I said the handwritten note specifically for a young person, because I think that there are patterns that people expect. And I think in a world where there's so many comments around millennials being lazy, entitled, narcissistic, you only care about yourself, you only care about your smartphone, for somebody young to pick up. Now the action, if I were 45 or 50, they may say, oh, no, cool.
To that point, I think,
breaking patterns.
By the way, breaking patterns, I think what I would call culture hacking as terminology, you're absolutely right. Because when an 84-year-old great-grandmother sends a snap with a filter on her face, you're like, oh, fucking grandma. So you're right, breaking patterns is a huge deal.
You're like an 80-year-old trapped in a millennial body because it's a pattern.
All right, I like this. Who's your role model and why, and have they made a difference in your success today?
It's interesting hearing you say that. For me, only my parents have a seat at the table. It's especially on the work ethic part. Like, my mom raised 3 kids, no help even one day of her life, and just like. We call ourselves work dogs in Russian, me, my dad, and my mom. We were born in the old country. I mean, I didn't even see my dad until I was 15 because he left before I woke up and came home after sleep. But it's interesting, mine is actually a little bit more similar to yours. I actually think my true mentor is the game itself. I think I learned how to be a person from my parents, the kind of man I wanted to be, politeness, work ethic. But like true the way I think we talk about mentorship, who taught you? I would tell you that not seeking out mentorship is probably my biggest weakness. I recognize it. I think I put the romance of me, I always think about me in my own head. In the real estate, Stephen Ross from Related is my business partner. We do investing together. He owns a piece of Vaynermedia. I want to buy the New York Jets. That is my professional ambition. He owns the Miami Dolphins. I have breakfast with him the other day. We've been in business together for 4 years. He spends the entire breakfast yelling at me. He goes, I don't understand why you don't use me. Why don't you let me mentor you? I've done the thing that you want to do. Like, use me. I fucking want to do this. Let's do it. Use me. He's like, you haven't talked to me in 4 months. I'm like, look, man, I'm in my own fucking head. Like, I don't know. Like, the market, the game teaches me. I sit in this room, I look around, I know that the real estate market's been real good for a real long time. I'm real curious about what everybody does when it's not good, right? Like, you know, it's fucking good, Frederick. You know, like I mean, it may not, you know, like, I'm talking fucking 2008, I'm talking 2001, I'm talking like shit hits the fan. I think the market teaches you so much. Like, there's a lot of people that are 29 years old that have never been in the business when the market has been soft. You're not a real player until you get punched in the fucking face.
Is being an entrepreneur in your DNA, or is it something that you can actually learn to become?
I think it's a DNA trait. I think anybody who's not born with as much talent in it or natural can work at it and try the tactics, but that would be like me working at basketball. I could be better at it, but my skill set, my upside is only so limited. So I think we all have upsides in everything. We could all become, everybody here can become a better singer, but you're not gonna become Beyonce. And so I think entrepreneur is, it's, you know, when you're 4 years, I was 5 years old walking, I thought it was more fun to walk around Edison, New Jersey, rip people's flowers out of their yards, ring their doorbell and sell it back to them. That wasn't something I read in a Seth Godin book. You know, that was just like, it was there, and I think we see that. I think we, you know, what's weird about entrepreneurship, I'll be honest with you, I'm gonna go a little weird here for a second. It's been so good to me, entrepreneurship. I was at 80, you know, I'm 41. I got D's and F's as an immigrant in the 80s and 90s, which meant I was a loser. Like, there was no entrepreneurship in the 80s and 90s. If you were a bad student, you lost, right? There was no Harvard in my path. And so I am so thankful and grateful for the game of entrepreneurship. Right now, it's cool. Now people think it's cool to be an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurship is hard, and it is something that I think is more natural, and you've got to be very self-aware with yourself and figure out, are you an operator, are you a salesperson? If, you know, being an entrepreneur is a lot of pain, a lot, and it's very lonely.
And lonely.
It's very, right?
Yes,
It's like, because if you lose, you lost, right? And so I think it's boring, but I don't discourage people. I'm not like, oh cool, I'm a natural entrepreneur. You're not, like, you're more than welcome to try to accentuate it. I believe that everybody should audit themselves, triple down on their strengths, and surround their weaknesses with people or other things. So I get scared to say everybody should be an entrepreneur, because the number 4 at Facebook isn't necessarily an entrepreneur, but she made a lot more money than everybody who's tricking themselves that they're an entrepreneur. I think self-awareness is imperative in today's opportunities.
Gary, I've been meaning to ask you this question. So I did a little bit of research, and you know, you were the first to actually come out, and you were offered shares in Facebook to purchase Facebook, but you actually went on a live YouTube channel. You talked about Twitter, for Facebook to be worried about Twitter. And Mark Zuckerberg actually invited you to come and speak, and lo and behold, you talked about Twitter being a disruptor because of consumer behavior. You then had an opportunity, Mark thought it was amazing to speak in front of Facebook, and then he offered you his parents' shares. Later on, you invested in Twitter, then Tumblr, then Facebook, then Snapchat, and then Uber. What is the next tech company that you're going to invest in? Just a little bit of a tip for our audience here today.
So I and Steve we did a $25 million fund. We both put in 12.5. I deployed that. Snapchat was part of that back 3, 4, 5 years ago. Last year, I was in the process of raising a $150 million fund to deploy on the back of all the successes I've had. And right around this time, maybe late August of last year, I gave back the $82 million that I had already committed from others back. I took on a lot of overhead, lost a lot of money, my biggest losing venture financially in my career, because I think we have a supply and demand issue in entrepreneurship. To your point, and I mentioned it earlier, you're not a player until you get punched in the face. Everybody's an entrepreneur because it's cool, and why not? You have an idea, people give you money, it's worth $4 million, and you get to learn as a 23-year-old it's a no-lose game. I don't know what it is, but I can tell you that and the reason I brought up is the market good, because I'm in a market too, and I think we're super inflated. It's very difficult to figure out the opportunities, and I'm actually actively not investing. I haven't invested in anything in about 6 or 7 months, and I think there needs to be a massive correction. I'm desperate for the economy to collapse. I'm being dead serious. I think everything is overpriced. I think there's a bunch of, I know when C and D players are winning, shit's about to get bad. And there's a whole lot, I'm sure I see the body language, you know a bunch of people that can't sell shit selling homes right now, which means fuck, right? And so I have no recommendation for you. I think that things are being artificially plopped up, and I think that we're being held together right now by bubble gum and Band-Aids, and I am looking forward to fucking carnage. I am. I mean it. I really believe it.
So Gary did not disclose which company is next, but...
None. I genuinely believe it. I think that if you look at the fundamentals, if you look at what's going on, it's...
Stock exchange soon?
Stock exchange. I think look, the one thing that, and I think you guys all know this, the reason the reason I'm not running around, and some of you follow me and talk about this a lot, is because there are so many powers that don't let the natural market dynamics play out. They plop it up, cash infusion, print money. You've got so much disruption. You've got cryptocurrency. You've got so many things going on in the world. There's too many things that I don't understand that allow things to hold up. So I don't know the timing, but I know it when I see it. And it doesn't feel great for me. I have no idea how that impacts you, but I think not seeing those things in the water is being naive. And I think here's what I would say. Actually, I'm trying to think, really bring value. Making decisions on how you want it to be and hope it to be versus what you're actually seeing is very dangerous. And when I just talked, I watched a lot of you, especially people that have been through a cycle or two, look at each other and shake your heads with each other. That makes me feel, I hope you're actually backing up your actions against your intuition. Because why I want carnage is I'm being strategic about sitting on cash, and it's gonna be a lot of fun for me to buy a company that today costs me $71 million to buy that company for $1.7 million because they've overextended themselves, and when there's not cash in the system, they're dead. I'm sure that's how you make a lot of money in real estate too, if you know what the fuck you're doing.
Great. So Gary, I invested in cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. What do you think?
I think you made some money.
Gary.
I don't know, that's what I mean, look, crypto is so much bigger than people, people talk about Bitcoin, but once you start understanding what blockchain dynamics mean, this is gonna change the way our entire society lives over the next 20, 30 years. It's worth your 4 hours on a beach one day to get educated on blockchain and Ethereum and where we're going. This is how wills are gonna be done, this is how contracts are gonna be done, this is how everything is gonna be done. So get educated.
We all know that real estate is not local, it's actually international, and all three of you guys have traveled internationally. Gary, you go and you speak in Asia, Europe. Frederick, you have your own brand in Sweden, real estate division. And Paul, you work with companies across overseas. How important is it to connect with those folks, knowing that our audience today it's about real estate? How important is it to not be local but be more international?
Your actions have to map your ambition. I mean, how important is it? If you want to be a real player at the biggest scales in the world, 15 years from now, it makes sense to look at the world in a more macro. If you are fully deep into your career and you've got 4 more years to go and you want to enjoy yourself after that, probably matters to you less. I think to me, this is completely personal, and honestly, whether it's the conversation of international expansion or relevancy, whether it's work-life balance, whatever it may be, you need to reverse engineer your ambition. My biggest frustration with a lot of entrepreneurs is their actions don't meet their ambition. I have kids telling me all the time that they're gonna buy the jets too, yet they go to every fucking Coachella and every music festival and are out with Ace at 3 o'clock in the morning on Snapchat. And so, you know, to me that question is completely predicated. For me, I want 100% brand awareness around my thoughts around business. So I've got to go to Asia. I've got to go to South America. So then my actions are mapping towards that. But this is international expansion stretches you thin, just like any expansion does. So if you're hungry and you need to be fed, you've got to go find other food. But I think you need to be smart about it, because every time you've got, you know, there's a saying my parents always used in Russian that translates to, you can't have your ass on 2 toilets, right? And so, Russians are funny. I think of expansion that way, but if your ambition is, you can have it on 3 toilets.